Is he with us?
Yes, he is. Maybe there's technical problems.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. We are on slide number 3, and we are going through our learning outcomes. I'll restart. At the end of the session, you must know what must be done to restart or start a Pathfinder or Adventurer Club. So which means the club organization is looking at a church that does not have Pathfinder or Adventurer Club at all. Understand the club tasks and organize your staff accordingly. Know the pieces of the Pathfinder and Adventurer uniforms, where to purchase them, and how much they cost. Learn the components of a club merit system and how it is used to determine awards. Next slide. Introduction. What is to organize? To organize is to establish. Just like I've just indicated that as we are looking at knowing how to organize, so you are establishing a club. You don't have a club. You are starting a club from scratch. So to organize is to establish. And how do you go about establishing that? Leaders are encouraged to meet with their pastor, their conference director, their Pathfinder area coordinator on a regular basis for guidance and direction as they begin the building local church Pathfinder or Adventurer Club ministry. So basically here, what it means is that for most probably for a church not to have a club, and now you have a vision, you want to start a club, there are children in the church, but nothing is happening. You will need someone who is going to guide you on what steps must be taken. You will need someone who's going to take you along what you need to do in order to make sure that you have got an established Pathfinder or Adventurer Club. Let's move to the next slide. Because having a Pathfinder or Adventurer Club is an outreach ministry of your local church. Yesterday, when Pastor Masuku was presenting, he was presenting on outreach. And now we understand that these clubs, Pathfinder and Adventurer, they are outreach ministry. It is required that your church board approves it. And it must be recorded in the minutes that on this particular date, we approved that we are going to have a Pathfinder or Adventurer Club. Therefore, work with your pastor and put together a proposal to present to a church board. Approval should be recorded in the minutes. So your proposal must be, when one is presenting a business proposal, your business proposal must get the buy-in of those whom you are presenting to. So same applies to this one. You must, your proposal must get the buy-in of the church board. Why do you think the church needs a Pathfinder Club? Why do you think the church needs an Adventurer Club? And then you present that proposal to the board, and it must be recorded. It must be recorded for future reference and even recommended so that it can be taken to the church at large. Next slide. The next slide is gather your club leadership team. Gather your club leadership team. With the support of your pastor and the church board, as we have taken your proposal to the church board, now you have the buy-in from the church board. You recruit church members to become active as staff. Remember, the staff for the Pathfinder staff, the Adventurer staff are church members. So recruit church members to become active staff members. Share the needs, share the vision, share the enthusiasm of what a Pathfinder or Adventurer Club ministry can do for your youth in the larger community around your church. Ask your area coordinator to join you for staff organization meetings to help teach the fundamentals of Pathfinder or Adventurer Club ministry and to build the vision of your staff. So it is very much important to make sure that you share your vision of what is it that the Pathfinder or Adventurer Club will do for the children at church? What is it going to do for the children within the community? What are the benefits? You talk of a child. One thing that I've realized most of the times is that our children who are in the church, they have got more confidence. They are able to stand in front of the people and present, such that even when they go to school and they are asked to stand in front of the class, it's not something that is scary because they are used to standing in front of a larger group. So there are a lot of benefits that comes with having these clubs besides just spiritual growth. We are moving on to the next slide. Recruit pathfinders and adventurers. So if we check, we have consulted with the board. We were consulted with when we started, we consulted with our pastors, our area coordinators, our conference director. We took the matter to the board. And then after the buy-in of the board, we have recruited the staff members. And now we need to recruit the pathfinders and the adventurers. These clubs, in order for the club to be a club, it must have the members. And the members are the pathfinders and are the adventurers. So how do you go about recruiting pathfinders and adventurers? Announce Pathfinder and Adventurer Club ministry during the worship service. The church congregation can give support and enthusiasm for this ministry as you begin organizing. You and your staff should talk with potential pathfinders and adventurers and their parents. Tell them what Pathfinder and Adventurer Club ministry is and the club's plans for the year. Share the vision with them. Gather names of individuals in your church who can support the club by sponsoring a uniform for a Pathfinder or Adventurer, instructing a specific honor or award, and helping with fundraising, etc. Give participants the forms needed to register their clubs with the conference. Let them know what specific guidelines the conference has for Pathfinder or Adventurer Club ministry. In other ways, some of the things that you may probably need to do in order to make sure that the parents understand what pathfinding or adventuring is all about. Or maybe for them, pathfinders, because now you need to talk to the pathfinders and adventurers themselves, and you also need to talk to the parents. You may invite another club. On a day, you may invite another club, or you can just share some videos of what other clubs are doing. From seeing that, when the parents see what other kids are doing in other churches, and then you ask them, don't you want that to see your kids also doing that? Is it not better for your children to be involved, to get busy with things of God, rather than to be continuously playing on the phone? Just imagine a child who is not in a Pathfinder or an adventurer, or on a holiday, especially a very long holiday. What keeps that child busy? Is it anything that is fruitful that keeps that child busy? So bring all those advantages so that the parents can see. And one thing for sure is that our parents, they want things that are fruitful, that are going to keep our kids occupied, rather than always playing on the phones, on the gadgets, playing games, and the parents are not even able to monitor those gadgets because we are always busy as parents. Let's move on to the next slide. Staff organization and tasks. Pathfinder and adventurer leaders are volunteers who receive no pay for their service to the church. All of us are volunteers. We don't receive any pay for the service that we render to the church. In many cases, those who volunteer to be leaders are highly committed to Christian ideals. This is the way it should be, since the Pathfinder and Adventurer leader often plays a larger part in providing a Christian role model to young people than any other person in the church. If you were taking yourself for granted as a leader, one thing that you must know is that you play a very big role. When adventurers see you, they see a role model. When Pathfinders see you, they see that role model. And sometimes that's when you will now hear some adventurers, especially with the adventurers, they come to a point where they will tell you that my teacher did not tell me that. My teacher did not tell me that. So we need to understand the role that we are playing so that we may be positive role models to to the children that we are leading. Next slide. I want us to look at the flow charts of the youth ministries. If we look at that flow chart there, we have got junior youth on your left, and you've got senior youth on your right. So we need to understand that Master Guide is a leadership curriculum that we do to cover adventurers and pathfinders. We are equipped on how we can best lead the adventurers and the pathfinders who fall within the junior youth. And then on the other hand, there is senior youth leadership, which is also a leadership curriculum which equips young. And these two are not competing. They are just helping the church in making sure that there is continuity from building a child from a adventurer age from 4 years, a little lamb, until the child, until someone is old enough, is a young adult, and is probably a leader as well. Let's move on to the next chart. To the next slide. Okay. In understanding the flow chart, I also want us to understand the structures of the church in the youth ministry. We have the general conference, youth director. We have the division, youth director. We have our union, youth director. Our division is SID, maybe for those who may not know. Our union is SAU. And then we have our conference, junior youth director. That is our Trans Orange conference. And on the blue chart there, I tried to tailor make it for our own, to speak to us as a Trans Orange conference. We have got federations or districts in our flow chart, and we also have the area coordinators, and then the local church. If you have been in the leadership, maybe for some time, you remember that in the term when Pastor Rambao came in, at one point we didn't have federations. The local church was dealing directly with the conference. The structure was the other one, which is the one that is in a secular, on my left. Whereas after some time, we had the federations in place, which made life easier for the conference director, because he cannot attend all the churches, all the districts, because he is just one. So bringing in the federations, area coordinators, it tries to streamline and to attend to each and every club. So if you are having a challenge at your local church and you don't know who can assist you, your area coordinator is there. If the area coordinator maybe is challenged or probably needs help, you move on to the next step, that is our federations or our districts. We move on to the next slide. Okay, we are going to talk about staff training and approval on this slide. And we know that we need to equip the leaders just as we are here to equip each other and to help each other. So the staff needs to be trained to understand Pathfinder and Adventure Club ministry. All staff should undergo basics training to help them minister to children. To continue effective ministry, continuing education is available. Because of the significant influence and responsibility that Pathfinder and Adventurer staff are given by parents as well as church leaders, all volunteers working with minors must be approved by their conference prior to participating in Pathfinder and Adventurer Club ministry. Let participants know what is required for volunteer approval in their conference. To take the first point there, where it says we need to undergo basic training. This is the basic training that we are doing, and there is continued education. I want to believe that in some districts right now we are looking at the club ministry as a whole, but you may realize that we are not getting deep into the curriculums. So the area coordinators, the federations do also provide these trainings to make sure that we are equipped and we are able to deliver okay, the word has gone away. So that we are able to deliver without leaving any gaps. So these continued trainings, they are very, very much important. And it's very much important for us to attend. It doesn't matter that you have attended before. One thing that I've realized is that you may attend a training today, and someone tomorrow may also facilitate again club organization. There is something that you're going to get from that person that probably I might not have covered today. So it's very much important that staff needs to be trained, and everyone needs to be equipped. And then on the point number 3 there, on bullet number 3, it says, because of the significant influence and responsibility that Pathfinder Adventurer staff are given by parents as well as church leaders, all volunteers working with minors must be approved by their conference. How does the conference approve the staff? That is why we have got the procedures that we need to go through. One of them is the trainings. Number 2, there are some screening that needs to be done at local church level, a screening of the teachers, of the participants. Right now, there are regulations that are coming right from the top there, from the GC, issues of police clearance, issues of us attending child protection course. All those are trainings that are making sure that when the conference has provided all these trainings to us, child protection course, and we have done your police clearance, and you are ready to work with the children, at least the conference can surely endorse you, not only to work at local church level, but even to be used anywhere else because your record is clear. All this is done to make sure that our children are safe. And then it is very much important to know all these things as a volunteer, because as a parent, you also want your child to be safe. You want to trust the person who is working with your children. The world out there, one thing that you also need to note is that as much as we are in church, not all of us are Christians. So it is very much important to take necessary precautions for the safety of the minors that we are working with. To the next slide, please. Club leadership team. The leadership team consists of the following. We have a director, at least one deputy director. For some clubs that has got so many kids, the deputy directors can be 2, of which in some cases, those 2 deputy directors, the other one is a female, the other one is a male. And they are meant that when you go for camping, when you go for camps, at least there is one who is taking care of, who is overseeing on the side of the male kids, and the other one on the side of the girls. And then we also have unit counselors and instructors. And then we have a secretary and a treasurer. Next slide. What are the qualities of a good leader? What are the qualities of a good leader? A good leader loves God supremely. We are in church, and we are not talking about the leaders in the world, but we are talking about the leaders for Pathfinders and Adventurers. So the qualities of a good leader is, in this context, loves God supremely, loves children sincerely, serve with enthusiasm. Considering that this work is a volunteer and it's not paid for, in order for you to work with the children to become a good leader, you must love children sincerely, and you must love all of them without showing partiality. And you must also possess emotional stability. Imagine if your emotions are not stable and you're working with children, already your mood is somehow down, and the child is happy running to you and comes across your other side of the mood. It's not good for the child, because the children are always happy. children are always happy. At church, as a leader, you can tell me how many hugs do you get from children. And if your emotions are not stable, you will take it out on children. So you must possess emotional stability. You must enjoy being outdoors. Children love playing. You cannot keep children indoors continuously and continuously. They love playing. So even yourself must enjoy being outdoors. If you want to check how much children love outdoors, just have an afternoon program where you won't have a program for children and you are in church, everyone. You were with the kids in church from in the morning. You took a lunch break and you are back again in the afternoon for a program and you are in church. You may ask everyone to get inside church, but after some time, just turn and look around. You find all the kids are outside, slowly going out, and they are now playing around outside. So even as a leader, you must enjoy being outdoors because the age group that you are dealing with, they enjoy outdoors. Know the essential characteristics of adolescence. It's very much important so that you know the age group that you are dealing with, whether you are an adventurer, or we are working with the adventurers, or you are working with the pathfinders. You need to know their characteristics. You must know that, oh, okay, now I'm dealing with the 14 years, and this is how they are. Okay, now I'm dealing with the 5 years. Oh, the 5 years, these are small kids. How do I work with the little ones? Learn a variety of skills. Learn a variety of skills. Children can easily get bored if you don't use a variety of skills in working with them. So learn a variety of skills in order to keep them captivated, in order to make pathfinding and adventuring an interesting club. A pathfinder in adventure, it must be very much interesting. It mustn't be a boring something that is boring, because if it's boring, you also lose them. So make sure that you learn a variety of skills and make their pathfinding days and their adventuring days more interesting. Develop the ability to organize. Develop the ability to organize. There is a lot that you need to organize as you are working with the children. So you must develop the ability to organize. Maintain good relations with fellow workers. Maintain good relations with fellow workers, and not only fellow workers, even with the parents. Maintain good relations with them so that there is an easy flow of communication and there is shared responsibilities as you are working with them. Radiate a dignity of presence that assures order. Have a sense of humor. So the children, they enjoy playing with us leaders, teachers sometimes. So have a sense of humor. If you need to joke with them and laugh with them, play with them, have that sense of humor and be a child at that time as you are working with them. Be resourceful and creative. It's very much creativity is very much important when you are working with the children, to make sure that they love new things. They love new things. You mustn't be predictable to know that always we are doing this way. Just be creative so that they always look forward to something new. They always look forward to something new. Let's move on to the next slide. We are going to, can we go to the next slide? Duties of staff and officers. What are the duties of staff members? We are going to look at the duties of staff members. We've got a club director. A club director is a member of the church board representing the club. So when a club director sits in the board, he speaks the interest of the club. He or she speaks the interest of the club. The chairperson is the chairperson of the executive committee, organizes, arranges, and supervises all club programs. So a director is the chairperson of the club executive committee. They organizes, arrange, and supervise all club programs. A club director is in constant communication with the area coordinator, as well as giving reports. He presides at all club staff meetings. Is a chairperson of the executive committee, or that point is repeated. So those are some of the duties of a club director. For details, for more detailed or broken down responsibilities, you may visit your Pathfinder Administration Manual, page 37 to 44, or your Adventurer Administrative Manual, pages 17 to 21. In case you don't know your duties, you'll find your duties there. Let's move on to the next slide. The next slide is talking about the duties of a deputy director. The duties of a deputy director. The deputy directors, they take charge of club meetings in the absence of the director. They accept assignments of the director and share in the leadership responsibilities of the club. They check progress of the achievement classes, outreach activities, and they take care of the club equipment. For more, if you visit those pages, they will cover all the responsibilities or the duties of all staff members. Let's move on to the next slide. We'll move on to the next slide. Next slide, we are going to be looking at the duties of a club secretary. What are the duties of a club secretary? The club secretary keeps all the records of all keeping of all club records. Responsible for the club library. Is for those churches that may probably have some maybe a place where you can have a club library. We know that in our clubs there are books that our children read, and sometimes maybe buying them for each and every child for each and every child may be a challenge, or for each and every year it may be a challenge. But rather you can have a club library. You've got your Pathfinder story there, you've got your Steps to Christ there, you've got the Bible stories for the adventurers, because in adventurers you find a requirement that says read a story about Jesus. So you have your simplified versions, Bible stories there, and that way you are monitoring. The secretary will take care of that club library to make sure that there is continuity and there is a thorough attention in achieving in class achievement, because sometimes reading from a phone is different from reading from the actual book. And if it's true, if it's the adventurers, they want to see pictures, so you need to have those books. Keeping an attractive bulletin board display which can be changed often. So the secretary also keeps an attractive bulletin, what is going to happen when, and then you keep on advertising it. Order supplies and all club record forms from the conference office as needed. Check the units records taken by the scribes and transfer them to the Pathfinder individual record sheets. Record all points and demerits on the permanent record sheet. Post the list of accumulated points by units on the bulletin board at least once a month. I'll move on to the next slide. Duties of a club treasurer. A club treasurer counts and records all funds such as membership fees, dues, offerings, donations, and fundraisings. Transfer funds to the church treasurer to be kept in reserve. So when the club treasurer transfers the money to the church treasurer, he or she remains with his or her own record. Same applies when money is withdrawn from the church treasurer, he or she also keeps a record of how much has been withdrawn. So the club treasurer does not keep the money, but keeps financial records. He or she can collect funds and forward them to the church treasurer and keeps the records. So we don't keep money as club treasurers. We don't keep money in our homes or in our accounts. That is church money. As much it is for the club, but it's church money and it must be kept in the church account and be accountable and be accounted there. So this also helps in transparency, in issues to do with transparency, because the church treasurer can report on the finances and on your side, your report and the church treasurers, they also balance. Keep accurate income and expense journal sheets, listing all income and expense funds, each briefly and recording dates. I've explained that one. Keep all receipts, bills, and invoices. The same way you keep the record as a treasurer of the club, you also keep the receipts, bills, and invoices. As much as you may give a copy to the church treasurer, because once you withdraw money from the church treasurer, he or she will also request an invoice or a receipt or a bill, whatever it is. So the same, also you also keep your copy. This is easy for reporting. Instead of us always going to the church treasurer asking, how much money do we have? As a club treasurer, you can actually easily tell us because you also have the records. Collect fees for various camp outs and the field trips. So the collection of monies, if you are collecting monies in cash in church, there it's your responsibility to do the collection. Thereafter, you put it in your envelope, you forward it to the church treasurer, Pathfinder Club or Adventurer Club. Move on to the next slide, please. Club chaplain. Club chaplain leads out in providing opportunities for the spiritual development. Arrange devotional periods and speakers and periodic prayer bands. Act as a spiritual counselor, working closely with the unit counselor. Show a balanced Christian experience by participating in the club's secular activities. Select individuals to offer prayer at meetings and club activities. So as a chaplain, you also participate in the activities that kids do on Sundays, whether it's a fundraising, it's a fun day, there are games. You also need to participate so that you understand things also from their point of view as well and how they see the world. And then we move on to the next slide. Next slide is unit counselors. The unit counselors, these should be baptized members of the local church where the club is based. They take charge and lead or teach a unit or a class. They encourage, teach, and test necessary classwork for successful investiture of members. Develop a happy understanding and friendship within the unit. Should be trusted by the class, and sensitive information should be kept confidential, but be reported to the directors. So as a counselor, you are the best friend of that group that you are working with. So you must also demonstrate the qualities of a good friend. You must be trusted, and you must be understanding and be one of them. Be one of them. At the same time, you are also learning. As you are also teaching them, you are the best person to say, my class is now ready for assessment. My class is now ready for investiture. So we need to take charge of that as counselors, as unit counselors. Next slide. And now we are there on the junior counselors. Maybe before I move on to junior counselors, it's okay. You don't need to go back. On the last slide, the last line was talking about the last line was talking about being able to keep confidential information and be reported to the directors. It's not all information that may need to be reported to the directors. Sometimes when you're working closely with these kids, they can become so comfortable with you such that they can tell you those little secrets which are not harmful, which they tell their friends. And especially if they find the age, sometimes they do this just to test if you are able to keep secrets. The moment they realize that, we said this, and now the mothers are now talking about this issue, especially mothers. We like talking a lot. The mothers are now talking about this. Even when there is now something serious, they won't be in a position to tell you because they can see that they talk to you and then you go and talk to other mothers, or maybe to tell the parents or something like that. So we must be wise enough to tell which information can go to the directors and which information can I just keep as one of their friends. And then We go to the junior counselors. Now we are looking on the junior counselors. These are often master guides in training, 16 years and above, or any other young person who has finished Pathfinder classes, who wishes to stay and assist in the club. They work under the adult counselor and accept responsibilities as given by the counselor. They assist in all unit and club activities. They take charge of unit in the absence of the adult counselor. They attend staff committee meetings. So these junior counselors, I can say they are master guides in training, even if one is not a master guide in training, but we are actually training them to become leaders tomorrow. Therefore, they must work under someone, under a counselor, and they must take instructions from an adult counselor. If the adult counselor is not available, you must give that junior counselor, I need you to cover to discuss this with the class, or I have given them work. Please monitor and make sure that they are doing their work and they are not playing around or they are not idle. So junior counselors, they work under the supervision of an adult counselor. Let's move on to the next slide. Let's move on to the next slide. Instructor. Instructors are persons who teach specific skills or subjects as Bible, personal growth, outdoor skills, honors or awards and crafts. And then these may be drawn from regular staff members. So you may have your instructors from within regular staff members there. You can have your instructors, or they may be specialists, or specialists may also be selected from the church or community to teach specific subjects. These may or may not be members of the church. So when it comes to specialists, for example, maybe you're teaching something to do with the fire safety, maybe it's an award on fire safety, and you probably need someone from the fire department to come and demonstrate. Our adventurers, and not only our adventurers, our children, sometimes they learn from seeing a real person who is actually doing that real job rather than just theory. So you go to your nearest fire department and request them to come and take through the children through fire safety. And when they see that firefighter wearing the uniform, they see that big truck, it actually gets into their minds. So those are the specialists that we may be talking about. So it's not necessarily that as a counselor, you are a jack of all trades. You can actually teach everything. Sometimes you need to outsource the members who may be in the church or may not be in the church. I've seen that this is one thing that I've just realized this year as a Pathfinder director, that on the club registration form, there is an indication, there's a slot which asks the parent with the profession they are in. I think the purpose of that is also to know which your parents in the church, if you need a resource person, instead of going out, you might realize that one of your parents is actually working in that field. And instead of going out, you actually outsource outside the club, but within the church, to come and cover whichever area that you want them to cover. And then they must carefully study the class curriculum and requirements of the subject. So when you outsource someone, or when you look for a specialist or an instructor, they must know what needs to be covered. You must give them the requirements so that they don't come and leave the requirements not fulfilled, and then you give kids an award or an honor because you just outsourced. But make sure that they cover the curriculum or the requirements of the subject. Let's move on to the next slide. We also have the unit captain. This is a member chosen by the unit to encourage his or her group towards achievement and success by setting the example and using his or her influence to inspire each member to do his best. We also have the unit scribe, the member chosen by the unit to fulfill a variety of special duties, like keeping all unit records. So these unit captains and scribes are chosen amongst the club members. Next slide. Now we are going to look at club budgets. A budget is an estimate of income and expenditure for a set period of time. Every successful club operates within a financial budget. The finances that flow through the club are managed by the club treasurer in cooperation with the club, with the church treasurer. We have spoken about that one. It is important for staff to be aware of how their club finances work. Not only for staff, but even for parents themselves, because the parents are the main funders of the club. Therefore, they all need to know how their finances are working in order for them to keep supporting the club. Let's move on. Next slide. Sources of income. It is imperative that clubs operate with fiscal responsibility. Expenses should never exceed income. And where can we get our monies or our funds as the pathfinders in adventurer clubs? Annual membership fees. At the beginning of the year, as children are registering into the club, you put a fee to the registration fee. Church subsidy. If the church finances are well, they can also subsidize you. Sponsored by church members. You know, our church members, we've got some well-wishers who may, from time to time, would like to donate. So church members can also be some sponsors. And then fundraising. As a clubs, as youth department, as junior youth, you may also decide to have some fundraising activities on Sundays, whether it's games, and in order to participate at a game, you pay something. All those means that you can find what works for you in order to fundraise for the club. And then next slide. Next slide. Okay, yes. There is a sample budget. We have got your income, and your income on the first column. You have got your income, and you've got club registration. You have got subscriptions. You have got sponsors. You have got the church. And if you check on the next slide, there is January, and probably maybe in January there might not be anything, or maybe the funds, considering that maybe you would have told your parents that we need registration by month end of January, and then it comes through your subscriptions, your registrations, they come in February. There you are. You have collected your subscriptions. You've got your income. Down there, you've got your expenses. What are the expenses that you have as junior youth? You have insurance. We have got workbooks. We have got your investiture. We have got your induction. You've got your uniform, hiking, outreach, your World Pathfinder Day. You might probably want to invite maybe a guest, or maybe you may want to do something special for the children in celebrating the World Pathfinder Day. Maybe it's a cake. You put it on budget there. You have got assessment. On the assessment, what are the expenses that you have on assessment? Sometimes you may want to have some refreshments, both for the children and even for the assessors. The children are celebrating that finally we are done. So maybe after the assessment, and you know your kids, you know you were learning, and it's time to relax. After assessment, the children, they enjoy some refreshments. You've got your camp there, your camp fee, it's coming from the parents. You put it under your expenses. So your income must not be your expenses, they mustn't go beyond your income. So you can actually put all your expenses, whether they are sponsored by parents, or whether the event itself is sponsoring itself, against each and every item that is in your program. A budget must be set for it. And then we move on to the next slide. Okay. The next slide, we are going to talk of uniforms Each club should have a good plan for how they will manage uniform costs. Clubs have options when considering uniform expensive. Let's remember that when we are talking about this club organization, we are talking about a club that is starting from that is restarting or starting from scratch. So you are establishing a club. So the uniform is going to be an issue because you probably have more of your kids who don't have uniforms. Therefore, uniforms becomes a topic of discussion. The club may purchase certain pieces requiring the parents to purchase the remaining items. If the club was maybe on the subscriptions or maybe on the registration, your fee was covering maybe another part, you can cover the uniforms for children. Maybe every child, you are buying a neckerchief for each and every child, and then the parents will probably come in with the shirts and the bottoms. Clubs may also find sponsors willing to cover the cost of a uniform for a Pathfinder or adventurer. Clubs may request parents to purchase bit by bit. So sometimes you may ask the parents that, okay, we can all start with the scarves, and then with time, can you all have some, just a bottom and a white shirt without badges? And then mid-year, can we buy badges for our kids? So instead of giving the parents the entire bill at once and they feel overwhelmed, you can stagger it to say, we are starting with this one, every child, if every child can have this one, and then we move on, if and every child can have this one. You talk of like maybe for some of us, we have established clubs. When we are talking of induction, we ask all those children who are getting into Pathfinder that please make sure that your child has got a scarf and a wuku. That's the beginning. So at that time, as you are looking at the induction, every child will try to have that. With the time, you move on. We are preparing for enlistment. Maybe children have maybe a white shirt and a green or blue trousers, whichever, whether Pathfinder or adventurer. So as we are planning, as we are talking of these things, we also need to be in the shoes of the parents, not just to throw the bill at once as it is, or to try and make it affordable and workable with them. Considering that it's not only the church uniform, they also have school uniform and other things to take care of. Next slide, please. The club uniform helps make the club program real and visible. It is emblematic and representative of the worldwide club's ideals and standards. Each individual member becomes a very vital representative of the organization, and wearing the uniform will help to provide a consciousness of belonging to a club that rightly represents the Adventist youth of today. If the uniform is worn as ordinary clothing, it will have failed its purpose. The uniform should always be neat and clean. To wear it commonly for ordinary play or work lowers its dignity. The club program should be so valuable to each member that the uniform will be required and worn with enthusiasm. So we need to value our uniform, and we must wear it with dignity. We must not just wear it. Imagine if you are as a master guide or as a pathfinder or adventurer, you are playing. You probably on a Sunday you see someone playing soccer wearing a shirt that has got badges there. Then it loses its meaning, it loses its importance. Whereas, so we need to make sure that our uniform, we value it, and it becomes an emblem representing who we are. I have heard the kids when they are marching on the streets, whether it's Pathfinder or adventurer, they'll be singing everywhere you go. People want to know who we are. So you must be proud of who you are, and you must, when you are wearing it, you must feel that, yes, I'm a Pathfinder or I'm an adventurer. And and it's very much important for each and every child to have uniform so that they don't feel left out, so that they don't feel like they're the odd ones out. So let's try to make sure that all our club members, they have a uniform, especially when we are all required to be in uniform. Next slide. When should uniforms be worn? It is recommended that uniforms be worn on the following occasions: at all club meetings, at any public gathering when any or all act as ushers, guard of honor, color guards, on occasions as specified by the club director, at special pathfinder or adventurer services, while engaging in witness activity or community services, such as distributing food, basket flowers, and literature. So those are the occasions when we are to wear uniform. Next slide. Uniforms should not be worn by non-members. If you are not a member, you don't have to wear a uniform. You are not you are not a pathfinder, you are not an adventurer, you are not a club counselor, you are not any staff member, you are just yourself. The uniform is not for you. When engaged in selling or solicitation for personal profit or for commercial or political purposes, at any time or place when its wearing discounts the organization or lowers its dignity and esteem. As I have just said, let's make sure that we keep our uniform dignity in check. And then move on to the next slide. Each of the world divisions determined current policy, specifications, and procedures. A basic uniform should include the Pathfinder or Adventurer World emblem and the Pathfinder or Adventurer scarf. Other insignia and styles of uniforms are determined by each division in keeping with the norms and economic conditions of the field under their care. As I have just stated up there on the first line, that each of the world divisions determines current policy. For our own uniform, is we fall under SID. We do have for more details, you can visit the SID uniform booklet. It has got the specifications on what uniform you should wear and how you should wear it if you are not sure of anything. So you may visit the SID uniform booklet. And also for further reading, if you are not sure where to put your badges, our administrative manual, Pathfinder administrative manual, does tell us where you should put your badges, left or right, from page 52 to page 62. Next slide. There I've just, on the next slide, I've just added a page there, a cover page of the SID uniform booklet, to make sure that when you are searching for it, you have the correct one. I think I saw Tando sharing it somewhere. Am I correct, not Tando? Did you share? I saw something popping up on my screen.
Yes, I did.
Yes. So you made, if you don't have it, you may download it there so that you know your uniform. And then for us, if you want to order your uniforms, we've got our TOC AY shop there. I've put in the mobile number for AY shop. If you want to order, you've sent your email and you want to follow up if your email has been received, if your order has been received, there are the email address, there is the contact number. Our TOC secretary is the one who is working there at the AY shop, and she is going to be of help. And that is a cell number, but we need to take note that it's a work number. So you can only call it during office hours. Next. And then now we are looking at the merit system. What is the philosophy of merit system? The ultimate goal of Pathfinder or Adventurer is to prepare boys and girls for the coming of the Lord. Anything short of this mark is incomplete. So as much as we are running these clubs, let's not lose focus. The ultimate goal is to prepare them for the coming of the Lord. Every idea, plan, or approach builds into the master program of the Pathfinder or Adventurer club should help to develop personality and character. One area so often neglected, yet so basic to the need of personality and character development, is the practice of self-discipline or control. The greatest danger of the young, says Ellen G. White, is from lack of self-control. We find that one on counsels on diet and foods, page 243. Next slide. A club merit system provides a club a process for fairly awarding their pathfinders in participation, progress, developing. Good conduct award and pathfinder of the year awards have requirements that are met by using the club merit system. So with the club merit system, you are awarding, you are recognizing the good behavior, you are recognizing the good things that our pathfinders are doing, commitment, doing the work on time, and all those things, you are recognizing them so that they are motivated. And even those who also look and see that, oh, okay, so and so received an award for punctuality. Next time I'm also going to be punctual. And then they also become motivated. So at the end of the day, they are not competing against each other, but they are competing against the standard. Let's move to the next slide. The following list is a few of the benefits of the Pathfinder merit system. It challenges participation and involvement. It helps to develop personality and character. It also emphasizes the importance of individual responsibility. Pathfinders learn to compete against a standard rather than against one another. The merit system develops cooperation and coordination instead of competition. So it doesn't matter if you are giving an award for punctuality. If there are 3 of them who were punctual, recognize them. If there are most of them are neat, recognize their neatness. They are well behaved, recognize their good behavior, because it's not competing against one another, but against a standard. Next slide, please. It offers a legitimate and profitable reward to those who attempt to excel through individual initiative. It develops an attitude of self-discipline and self-control that's helping to ensure a well-controlled club atmosphere. When there is an award, most children, they also want to get that award. So then it will make sure that they try to practice self-discipline and self-control in order for them to also get that award. And then we move to the next slide. Merit system and points. Each Pathfinder club should have a merit system for their Pathfinder club and develop their own merit system point values, which are agreed upon by all staff members and understood by all Pathfinders and parents. So the merit system is not the same it's not a standard for all clubs in the conference, but you know your strengths as a club, you know the environment where you are, you know what is it that you can recognize, what you may not recognize. So the merit system for one church may not basically be the same for the other church. It is determined by the club leadership at that particular church. The club's merit system will help staff to fairly determine hours to be given to their Pathfinders throughout the Pathfinder year. Because you are not developing this merit system alone as a leader, you are working with your leaders, your Pathfinders, and your parents, then it becomes a standard for every child in that church, and everyone is aware of it. Simplicity is the key to a good merit system. So it doesn't have to be complicated. You are awarding something, simple things, punctuality. We have a club meeting on Sunday, meeting time is 9 o'clock. And you are marking register, you are checking who was early. Those, the unit counselors, the stripes, they check their units, who was early. You award the children for being punctual. We know that stewardship of time is very much important, and we need to teach our children from a very early age. Next slide. In many cases, Pathfinders do not need to know they will receive points until after they've participated. So the reason why they don't need to know is for them to be always at their best behavior. It's for them to be always on time. It's for them to be always aiming higher. Not because today we were told that there's going to be an award, then I'm going to be punctual. It must be a habit. It must be a lifestyle. All Pathfinder Club members will participate in a point plan known as a merit program. Club members will receive a value from 0 to 10 points for complete uniform, neatness, and unit attention. Members will receive 10 points for attendance on time. Members will lose 6 points for unexcused tardiness or unpunctuality. Members may earn extra points for helpfulness to the club or to the leadership. So you can just, for the fact that the child was thoughtful enough to see that there is help needed there, so let me lend a helping hand. You may award points for that, but it will be all about what is it that you have agreed as a club. Next slide. Members will receive a value of 0 to 15 points for club participation. Disobedience, rudeness, politeness, etc. are taken into consideration. The Pathfinder law becomes a living demonstration. There are awards for attaining a certain percentage of points for both the individual and the unit. The points, as suggested above, are issued at every official Pathfinder Club meeting as promoted for the Pathfinder calendar year and 2 weeks before the beginning of the new quarter. Next slide. Good Conduct and Good Conduct Award and Pathfinder of the Year Award. The club's investiture service is the place to reward club members for completing Pathfinder investiture achievement levels, honors, and special awards as discussed above. So when everyone is there, the investiture is like a graduation. It's a graduation at church. So that's the point. That's the time to give the best Pathfinder of the year, the well-behaved, the one who was well neat, always neat and full uniform, for punctuality. And then it will encourage others to make sure that coming year also I must get an award. Next slide. Okay, there I've just put some sample forms of a merit systems. We can see a unit name, unit number, counselor, captain, date, and then we have got the uniform, we've got the dues, we've got the attendance. So you are basically marking all those. On the other side is another sample B. The sample B, it has got the weeks. So on week 1, if it's a P, it means the member was present. If it's a T, it's tardy. It's A, it's absent. So at the end of the day, when you are now choosing your best an award, which award the child is gonna get, you'll be using these score sheets, and that way it will be fair to everyone, because you have been keeping a record of what was happening, who was early, who was not early, who was neat, who was not neat, who was well behaved, and then the last annexure is just a sample. The last slide is just a sample of a club registration form that you give to your club as the children are joining the club. Name, there is the details of the child. And the commitment, if you check on this form, the commitment is not done only by the parent. Even the child must know that they are committing into something. So the child must also sign, the parent must also sign. The parent is signing to make sure that they are going to support the child, because the children do need the support. So in that form, we have got a signature for both the Pathfinder and the parent. This form, you don't need to go through it in detail now. It's there in our Pathfinder manual. You can go we can go and check it out and look for more information, because our Pathfinder administrative manual and Adventurer administrative manual, they are loaded with information that will help us in leading our children or in running these clubs in the right way. Thank you. Last slide. Yes, thank you. This marks the end of the presentation. Thank you so much, Tando. Over to you, ma'am.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, my leader, Sibo. I didn't introduce you. Apologies for that. But our sister here is very qualified. She's an HR in person. She's a master guide. She's a local pathfinder. So we are in good hands. The presentation showed that you're experienced. So thank you so much. Apologies, I do have a co-host behind me here, so if you hear some background noise, apologies for that. Yeah, she is also a district senior youth secretary. She's an SYL coordinator, AJY assistant secretary. Wow, she's awesome. So thank you so much, my sister. She does have 2 children, 18 and 14. So she's also experienced mom. Thank you so much, my sister. We appreciate you stepping in at the last minute. Any questions? There was a question about the uniform. I think that was addressed. The uniform booklet is on the chats, as well as the insurance. There is a link there, as well as application form. Others are saying, thank you, my leader, for the insightful presentation. Thank you, my leader. Thanks, leadership. It was all clear. It seems like it was clear. I don't see any hands. Any hands? Okay, there's Toka. Toka. And then John. Toka, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I thought that I sent a message to the admin. I thought the admin would read out my question. In a case where you have a class or a group of pathfinders or adventurers, where some in their participation are much more successful than other kids in their honors and awards, such that it is evident, very evident, that some are performing, others are not. Do we still stick strictly to the merit system? There have been situations where parents, teachers, leaders have said that no, we should award the other kids so that there's some kind of parity, or at least, everybody kind of arrived and everybody was there. How strictly should we keep to the merit system in awarding honors and awards and in giving these marks, especially when there are cases where there are some who perform very, very well and the rest of the group or some are not performing very, very well? How do you engage in that dynamic, especially when parents, elders, teachers, whoever at church feels that we should be more Christian, quote unquote, in our approach to dealing with these matters? Thank you.
Should I come in, Tando?
Yes, you may.
Oh, okay. If you check on the merit system, we are not awarding the honors or the awards. Every child who has completed an award, regardless at which pace, as long as the award has been completed or an honor has been completed, they do get their honors, they do get their awards. But in this instance, we are awarding, if you check, there's a statement that I say, which I mentioned, where I said simplicity is key. You are talking of, we are looking at things of punctuality. You have got a club meeting, you're meeting on Sundays, and your meeting time is probably 9 o'clock, and there are those who are going to arrive at 9:30. So when it comes to punctuality, everyone is capable of being punctual. So we are strictly going to award those who are punctual. We've got issues of good behavior. We are awarding those who have behaved well to encourage others to also behave well. And then we talk of merit for a full uniform. Yes, your full uniform, the standard of full uniform may differ from one place to the other. There are those who are probably maybe coming from communities where a full uniform can actually be a real full uniform. And then there are others who are from disadvantaged communities where you may say your full uniform is just a green bottom where there's a skated trousers, a shirt, and a neckerchief. And then probably that is what you say a full uniform. So maybe on the issues of full uniform, you may look at the environment that you are looking that you are actually in your community to make sure that those who are not financially able to make sure that they've got a full uniform are not disadvantaged. But in terms of awards and honors completion of classes, everyone is invested for completing a class. Everyone is they are in a position to buy their honors and their awards as long as they completed them, regardless at which pace they completed them. I don't know if I answered you.
And what if half of the class did not complete? I think that's the rub here, where a large proportion of kids who came to our camp did not prove or show that they had completed certain classes, certain honors and awards specifically, and we were made to give all of the attending children honors and awards at the camp. So if you attended the camp, you got the honor of the award, not necessarily if you attended the class. There was significant pressure. So I understand from the textbook side how it's simple, but sometimes you're fighting against who themselves can be leaders, who themselves can be elders, who themselves can be parents. How do you navigate that? Just so that I just want to be clear so that I don't give an answer that's not sanctioned.
Okay, I'll respond to this one, and I'll also seek help maybe from my superiors as well. But my thought is, as far as honors and awards are concerned, those are earned items. If children did not complete honors and awards, there is no need for them to go and buy them, because we'll find children who are having an award or an honor on beginner swimming. And at the end of the day, by going ahead and buying that honor patch for the child, we are saying the child is completed this and is competent, can actually swim. And then instead, we are actually endangering the life of the child. So sometimes when it comes to honors and awards, we need to make sure that if it's not earned, it's not earned. Even us as teachers, let's not force to have children having a lot of patches on their searches, when in actual fact we did not deliver in terms of teaching them and them completing that requirement fully to say they are competent. Yes, I understand that a child may cover maybe an honor, say on fence, and then maybe two years down the line, one may not even remember, or probably by the end of the year, you may not remember everything to detail. But there are certain things that require skills to demonstrate. If you cannot demonstrate, you cannot say you are skilled. I don't know if there's someone who would like to answer differently. Fundis Angas Tando.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my opinion. But if they have not finished, I would encourage them to finish before going, to the next phase.
Yeah, don't make noise.
Yeah, so that's my advice. I mean, at Naturena, all the kids that didn't finish, they usually do 2 classes in the year. So just to encourage abantwana to finish what they started. That's my opinion, my leader, to make sure that the kids are accountable. I mean, it's the same at school. At school, they finish the grade, they finish everything, So we do encourage them to put God first and finish everything that needs to be completed. All right, Mr. John Dube, over to you.
Morning.
That is the last hand, by the way. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
I have a question on the procedure that you when you are starting, you have to go to finally the church after the board. There was a situation where they approached the leadership, the elder actually, and he was in agreement, and he was supposed to take everything up. But after some time, he realized that because there was a pressure on the pastor, and there were other issues that were supposed to be discussed in the board. They had not been addressed. There had not been a church board for a period of more than 6 months. So he was suggesting that we go forward. But other leaders said, no, it's about the issue. Finally, we spent the whole year without starting, and finally, we failed to do anything. I don't know what must happen in such circumstances.
Can you answer?
I'll attempt, but I don't know. I think I'll also need help if there's someone with a different opinion. I'll say it's difficult to go ahead without the approval of the board and even the church at large. I think it just requires us that we push them, because if we start something without them, tomorrow, and there are no minutes recorded to say we agreed on this, tomorrow if something happens, it's easy. Even if they say, I know you can go ahead without the board meeting. Tomorrow, when something happens, it's easy for people to say, we did not agree on this one, we did not vote for this one. So I think now it needs there is no way forward. For me, I don't see a way forward without the approval of the church board and the church at large. I don't know, maybe Mfundisi can assist, or Tando assist. We have more experience.
I think you are right. You're on point. Yeah. It's better that we need the buy-in of the church board and the parents and everyone involved. Yep. All right, so that was the last hand. I think there are a couple of questions on the chat. Can the kids be inducted before paying registration fees?
Now those are change arrangements. The right order is for them to register, and then they be inducted. But sometimes we know the challenges that we face in churches. We may not put like a stamp to say without paying registration they may not be inducted, because also the club may not start without induction. So it might delay a lot of things. So now those are some of the things where you can now do arrangements there in the church to see, okay, we need registration fees. As much as induction may happen today, but we are still collecting registration fees until month end. We can't really rubber stamp to say, this is it. Church challenges, that different churches have different challenges. I've seen that one. So sometimes we cannot, your people, the parents you're working with, your church. So do what works for you at the end of the day.
Yeah, correct. Where do we get Pathfinder application forms? Can we download it online? Yeah, also that is also church-based. I'm not sure if do we have such forms, but I've never, I've seen one. We did have, but yeah.
No, we do have them. We'll share them on the link when we share.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, my leader. Very interesting, informative presentation. I'm not sure I understand that question. In case we are waiting for investiture, can a club continue with the classes? Yes, I would say yes.
Yeah, those are again issues of church challenges, that for some reason you may not be able to invest the time you want to invest, but you can't wait until April waiting for investiture, or maybe May waiting for investiture, because the challenges why you are not getting invested. So you can start, but you can always make sure that in order for kids to be encouraged, they must graduate for the previous year so that they don't go on learning and not graduating.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Mudiba, you're the last hand, although I said that was the last hand, but you know, please, quick one.
All right. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, and it's a quick one. I wanted, a recap. I've missed some digits on, conference contact details concerning uniform only.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Contact details, TOC, AY shop, contact details only.
Oh,
I've got
okay.
073341. The last 4 digits I've missed.
Okay, we'll share them on the chat. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, my leader. All right, we'll move on to the next presentation, and it is by Dr. Shabalala Muziwake, Dr. Muziwake Shabalala. And let's just quickly introduce him. He is a member of the Temba SDA Church, serving as an elder. He's also the Ebenezer District Adventist Youth President and Meals on Wheels board member. He is a physiotherapist and senior lecturer at Sifako Matlako Magato Health Sciences at Medunsa, or formerly Medunsa. He is married with and a father of 3. Thank you so much, my leader, for taking the time to present. Over to you.
Thank you so much, my leader, for the opportunity and the presentation, the introduction. I'm sure that I'm audible now. Am I audible?
Yes, you are, and we can see you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, my leader. We can move to the next slide. Today's topic, and maybe my leader, today's topic is Module 8, Introduction to Medical Risk Management and Child Safety. I'm not sure if maybe my leader, you'd like me to share from my side. It might be easier.
Yeah, please do share from your side if you can.
Okay, let me try that just quickly. Okay. Is it showing now?
Not yet.
Okay. Let me just close again and share. We'll stop other screen sharing. Do you want to continue? Yes. Okay. There we go. Is it showing now?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my leader. So today we are talking about an introduction to medical risk management and safety issues. All right. So when we look at this topic, we are on a journey. And I believe amongst us, master guides and master guides trainees. And this is so important for this journey that we are embarking leaders, because it will ensure the success of all our activities throughout the year. Just to consider this risk management issues and to be aware of the medical issues that pertain to this ministry, the Junior Youth Ministry. Now, this workshop or this talk, it will cover introductory information on medical forms. We will also talk about release forms. We will address abuse prevention. We will also talk about conference volunteer screening requirements. We will touch on staffing levels. We will touch on transportation guidelines, the importance of emergency plans, and supervision issues. Therefore, by the end of this, the learning outcomes that we should take note of, leaders, will include, number one, understand the volunteer screening and code of conduct requirements. Number two, knowing the 7 safety topics that are addressed by Seventh-day Adventist risk management, or what we know as ARM, and know the components of providing appropriate emergency medical care, particularly to minors, and be able to apply adequate supervision rations for transportation, activities, and events. Now, for the first part, we are going to just talk about the code of conduct and child abuse awareness. Leaders, it's important to emphasize that all adults working with minors in the Seventh-day Adventist Church are required to participate in a minor safety training, and this will include, among others, signing the volunteer code of conduct, or in our case, obtaining the police clearance, and understanding the importance of volunteer background screening. There are 2 Bible texts that shows how serious God is with our children. The first one is in Mark chapter 9, verse 42, and it reads, "Whosoever shall offend one of these little ones that believe in me, it is better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and he were cast into the sea." So we can see how serious the Lord is about the protection of children. In Psalms 34, verse 7, the Bible says, "The angel of the Lord encampeth round about them that fear him, and delivereth them." As a result, we need to really prioritize the safety of our children. Now, we have a position from our church that we find particularly in the church manual. When we take an extract from page 18 of, or rather the page 168 to 169 of the church manual, edition number 18, it says there, church should be a safe place to bring our children. Everyone involved in work with children who are minors must meet, number 1, all church, and number 2, and legal standards and requirements. So it means that the church has a standard, but also we need to be aware of the legal standards and requirements that we need to fulfill. And one of them is that when we are working with children, we have to obtain a police clearance. Now, on these 2 pictures that, or these 2 images that I have, there's a child protection course that is sanctioned by the Southern Africa Union Conference. And on the 2nd of July in 2022, SAU, during a youth indaba, it discussed the child protection course and made it very important for all of us under SAU to actually undertake this course. And I want to encourage leaders who may not have attended the course yet, that the conference does provide the child protection course, and I just want to encourage you to attend. The other thing that's very important is that the Adventist screening verification is a worldwide church initiative And it is not something that maybe when the conference requests us to do, we are trying to be difficult. I just want to encourage us leaders to ensure that we go through screening verification. Now, when we talk about the police clearance, we need to know that a police clearance certificate is an official document issued by the Criminal Record and Crime Scene Management, stating whether or not any criminal convictions have been recorded against an individual. And as to obtain the police clearance, applications can be done at any local police station. Okay. And now, with regards to the background check in South Africa, we need to note, leaders, that there is a National Child Protection Register, and this register is kept by the Department of Social Development. And within this register, there are records of persons who have been found guilty of child abuse, and also persons deemed by the courts to be unsuitable to work with children. And when we have access to this register, we need to check Part B, which will then list all people deemed unsuitable to work with children as a result of previous incidents. And what we can also do as a local church is that through the local church pastor, the elder, or the church clerk, form number 29, obtainable from the Department of Social Development, may be completed. And when this is done, we can actually check if the elected leaders are fit to work with children. Now, the completion and submission of the form is done with the elected leaders' consent. And the recommendation is for both methods to be used in South Africa, meaning that we recommend, number one, that leaders should do the police clearance. And number two, we also recommend that the church clerk or the elders and pastors should request consent from leaders who are elected to work with children that their names should be submitted and checked against the Department of Social Development register. Now, child abuse. Leaders, I cannot overemphasize that child abuse is rampant in our world and around our children and youth. And it's important to note that as a Pathfinder staff, you will come in contact with children who have gone through some form of abuse or who are going through challenging times and difficult situations, be it at home or in the schooling environment, and sometimes even in the church. And therefore, it's imperative that we should have awareness of what is happening in the lives of the Pathfinders, and maybe I should add adventurers under our care and supervision. And I want to emphasize that the Seventh-day Adventist Church has a zero tolerance for child abuse. And what this means is that you as a child or youth worker are expected to report to your leaders and the authorities if you discover that a child is being abused in any way. Therefore, it is imperative that you attend training that your church and conference provides on child or youth safety training and abuse awareness education for volunteers working with minors. Child abuse by definition. When we define child abuse, it is defined as being any physical or mental injury, act of sexual abuse or exploitation, negligent treatment or maltreatment of any child under the age of 18. And for this, leaders, we really urge that we should stop child abuse because it is everybody's business to ensure that our children are in a safe environment where they can grow. Now, what exactly is child abuse? Child abuse, when defined by the American Association for Child and Adolescent Psychologists, it says, child abuse is a physical injury or intent to hurt a child as a result of hitting, kicking, shaking, bending, or otherwise harming a child. And I want to just emphasize on this point that leaders, we need to be careful how we then approach the issue of disciplining children in our clubs. Because by law, when you hit a child or when you shake a child physically just by holding them and shaking them, hey, what are you doing? That is actually regarded as child abuse. So we really need to be very careful how we discipline children. And let me give another example. Sometimes one may feel that, okay, we don't have to hit children, and they do what used to be done to us at school. If you have pencils as a leader, you can, or pens, you can put 4 of them there and you compress the child's hand like that, inflicting some kind of pain. Leaders, that is a form of physical child abuse. And I would like us to refrain from such practices moving forward. I think I have really tried to emphasize what is child abuse and particularly focusing on physical child abuse. I cannot rush on this point. Second one, it's sexual child abuse. And by definition, is when a child is used by another person for that person's sexual satisfaction. And I want to now emphasize on this point that especially in the advent of social media, when, for example, leaders, you are doing the swimming honor, please let us refrain from also taking some of the pictures of our children in swimwear and posting them on social media. We may actually not only be contravening the Children's Act, but we may also be contravening the POPI Act. Unless if you have permission, you can actually do so. So we need to learn a lot about issues around sexual abuse. You cannot even carry photos of children or allow any other compromising WhatsApp posts to be on your phone. The Children's Act actually requires you to report such incidences. I think you will learn more about this in the child protection course. The other one that's very important is the emotional child abuse. And by definition, the emotional child abuse is a pattern of behavior that hurts a child's emotional development or sense of well-being. For example, name calling our children in the class could result to emotional child abuse. For example, saying that, lo mnyama, this dark one, and so on. Let us refrain from such because it can really damage the child's ego and self-worth. And we may not be able to actually estimate the extent of the damage emotionally that we will be causing to that particular child when we name call them, when we emotionally abuse them. The other one is child neglect. And by definition, child neglect is failure to provide for a child's basic needs such as food, housing, or schooling. And here, leaders, especially when we are in the community or when we have community children, we need to note that there are some children who are supposed to be in school who are yet not in school. And as leaders, we are supposed to actually, assist the families and make sure that we support child development and ensure that in the end, we win these children to Christ. The other one is interpersonal violence, and it includes actions when a person intentionally hurts another person. This includes community, intimate partner, or domestic violence, and bullying. And I know, leaders, that we have actually had a very interesting talk on bullying on the Sunday Chillers. So it's important to understand these concepts of interpersonal violence as well among children, and we should not allow it to happen in our club. Community violence also is violence that happens in a child's neighborhood or community. And then intimate partner violence is physical or sexual violence, the threat of violence or emotional abuse towards a current or past spouse or intimate partner. Finally, bullying is repeated negative acts by one or more children against another. And this we should actually be vigilant of, particularly in our clubs. Now, all what we have talked about, leaders, are what we call adverse childhood experiences. And we should we should try by all means to minimize these adverse childhood experiences. Now, some activities that we may need to do under learning activity 1A, and this, leaders, take it as your assignment. We need to note that some conferences do provide their own training and screening. And I'm well aware that in our conference, in this training platform, there are other leaders who may be coming from other conferences. So we need to read and complete the updated course developed by the SAU entitled Child Protection Course. All leaders in the TOC, I know that you have been provided with this material by our director, Pastor Rambau, and I'll urge you to just be aware of this. And maybe if you do not have it, leaders, in your federations, the presidents will be helpful to provide you, or any federation officer will be helpful in providing you with the Child Protection Course manual. And please make sure that you have this manual. Keep it in your file if possible, because this is going to be one of your resources for your local church and for your club, and to ensure that our children are protected. So as a requirement, leaders, please make sure that you have this Child Protection Course manual. Learning activity number 2, I urge you, leaders, to go to your local police station and apply for police clearance. And once you have applied, please include this in your portfolio, the police clearance itself. And where possible, if you are still waiting, you may also include the completed form to show that you have actually applied for police clearance. And I want to urge our leaders that we need to allow the leaders to complete the Form 29 from the Department of Social Development. And here the elder or pastor should check that the elected leader is not in Part B of the National Child Protection Register. And the clerk may write a letter for such an application that may also be kept in the portfolio to show that your clerk actually has requested or applied using the Form 29 and requested your consent to do so. Now, under lesson B, we are going to talk about risk management and safety. Here, leaders, we emphasize that club leaders and staff members and volunteers, they should demonstrate care for children by managing risk that threaten safety, assets, and resources. As a club leader or staff member, it is your responsibility to prepare for both the expected and unexpected, regardless of the event. And here we say leaders need to follow basic safety guidelines, which will help every participant in your club to stay safe and have a great time as we engage with various Pathfinder and adventurer activities. Now, some of the standard things to be aware of leaders include the following. Number one, please leaders be aware or be familiar with what your church's insurance covers and does not cover. I know the conference has actually forwarded material on this. Please familiarize yourself. Number two, know the POPI Act that protects the privacy of medical records and personal privacy. I've also highlighted the issue of photos and so on. Leaders, we need to be aware of that. And also be aware of child labor laws, and particularly where issues of fundraising are involved. We need to be aware that there are child labor laws in place that we need to comply with and not make our children to do certain things that contravene the child labor laws. And then the other one that's very important, for property and space where pathfinders meet. For example, if you have been using a certain open space for drill and march or pathfinder and adventurer activities, and we know it has been raining, there's some grass that grows in that area, leaders, you need to mark area where there's a little bit of a bush as a risk. And it's important that you should note such places and do something about that. And if you cannot do something about that, make sure that children do not play in such areas that may compromise their safety. I mean, we can talk for a very long time on this issue of property and space. And what it simply means, leaders, is that we need to constantly be aware of the spaces where our children are doing their pathfinding activities. With regards to vehicle safety, we need to note that vehicle transporting pathfinders must be properly licensed and insured. So we cannot just grab any car and say, you know what, we can use this one for taking our children to their excursion or to various trips that they need to go through. Let's make sure that the vehicles that are transporting our children are properly licensed. Another important standard thing to be aware of is that all club meetings and trips should actually be approved by the local church board. And here, leaders, I know that it's a challenge, as I've maybe tried to highlight in the previous presentation. I couldn't raise my hand, sorry about that. Is that we need to actually submit our plans to the church board, as we have had throughout our training. When you do your planning, please submit your plans to the church board and let the church board approve. And where possible, closer to the trip, the Pathfinder director, supported by other leaders who have an interest in, for example, child ministries and the junior youth and senior youth ministries, we need to ensure that the church board records these trips and they are reminded that we are going on a trip on this day. So it must be a well-documented trip or approved trip. And this is very, very important. Okay, I cannot overemphasize that. The other important standard thing to be aware of is that every club activity should be analyzed for possible risk issues, which means that even when you're about to take a trip, make an analysis, check what kind of a trip you are taking, whether there is high risk involved or there is minimal risk involved, so that you can make the necessary preparations, for example, around issues of supervision when you go. We will touch that later. Another important thing is that all staff members should receive the CMT training, which we call the basic staff training. And within the BST, we learn about, for example, the supervision standards and duties, as we'll touch on them in this talk, the safety guidelines, which I'm highlighting now, and the importance of risk analysis, which I'm emphasizing, because without this training, leaders may not be equipped to know what are the things that they need to take care of to ensure that their clubs are successful. Another standard thing to be aware of is that all staff members should have a first aid or a CPR training that is valid. Please, leaders, ensure that you have a valid first aid certificate or a cardiopulmonary resuscitation training certificate that is valid. And this will ensure that you can provide the best first aid care to our children whenever we are doing our various activities. Another important standard thing to be aware of is that we need to give staff specific job regarding the issues of risk management, including analysis and reduction. And this means that we need to allocate certain responsibilities to staff members pertaining to risk management or pertaining to risk analysis and risk aversion strategies that we could be applying in our local clubs. And another standard thing to be aware of is that all staff working with food should have training to prevent foodborne illnesses. And this is because we are actually seeing quite a lot of food poisoning incidences. And when we have basic training on food or on prevention of foodborne illnesses, it helps to ensure that our children do not get sick. You know, from practices that could have been refined and from practices that could have been modified. Another important point, leaders, is that emergency plans need to be made for every meeting or every outing or event. And that will include where to meet and what to do, etc. We need to have an emergency plan. For example, we also need to have a place where if there's an emergency, all the children, all the pathfinders should converge in that place. It should be a meeting place. And that could be, for example, for things like disasters, if maybe a building is on fire and so on. So those things are important that they should be made known before time, and that the church and particularly pathfinders, you know, should be informed of such. And one of the places where this can be communicated is during the enlistment or the enlisting night, or what is also commonly known as enrollment night, or an enrollment event that is done by the clubs. So these plans can be shared, and you know, they'll be specific to the church or to the club, and that communication goes a long way to ensure that parents and the church members are aware that we are careful and we do practice risk management and safety. The other important point, leaders, is that we need to have completed forms, such as the enlistment or registration form, as shared by my leader, President Sibu. And also we need to have the health records completed and signed by parents, the consent forms or the indemnity forms, and this should be accessible but kept away from the prying eyes. And when we say accessible, they need to be actually in the file of the director. All right. So how does the insurance form look like? Leaders, the International Pathfinder Application Form from the ARM, the Adventist Risk Management Incorporation. It looks like this. And the conference has actually given us these forms to complete, and I'm sure that leaders already have registered their children. And if not, I want to encourage us to register all our children to ensure that they are covered by the insurance. Now, the activities, the learning activities for this, leaders, I will really encourage you to print and read the handout that is entitled Taking Care of the Children, and also to review the section entitled Risk Management. And for you to get this online, you can actually go to the NAD Youth and Young Adult Ministries website, and under the Safety Resources tab, you can actually find this material. Yeah, I'm not sure, maybe also we will get some information if maybe the conference has updated our website to ensure that we have some of these resources on our website. And this is where, leaders, we need to pause to pray and ask the Holy Spirit to guide you to implement ways to keep children and youth safe. And we take this moment very seriously. So I'll encourage us to just pause and have this prayer I'm going to uncover. As we pray, we are praying. Our loving Father who art in heaven, Lord, we thank you for the privilege that you have given us to care for our children in our various clubs, and to give us the privilege to be co-laborers with you in the Adventist Junior Youth Ministry as we seek to bring our children to Christ. I pray that you may give us the wisdom to ensure that at all times we practice all risk aversion strategies to ensure that our children are safe. Make us wise, Lord, to know how to deal with sensitive matters beyond our control. We ask the Holy Spirit to be our leader and our guide as we follow Christ as our supreme master guide. Thank you so much for all these blessings. I pray for every leader that is on this platform. I also pray for all the clubs that are represented here. In Christ Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So, leaders, you can see this is very serious. The issue of child safety. We do not take it lightly, and I really encourage us to really take it seriously. Now, the next lesson, lesson C, we are going to touch on medical forms and first aid kits. I want us to be aware, leaders, that when working with minors, we are responsible to their parents or legal guardians for their well-being. There are some children who will come with a gogo from the community, or a mother or a father from the community. In all what we do, we need to be aware that we are responsible to their parents and or their legal guardians regarding their well-being, and we need to constantly keep the channels of communication open to ensure that at every stage they know what is happening to their child. Number two, in case of a medical emergency, we are responsible to provide appropriate care immediately and get the medical care as soon as possible. And this medical emergency refers primarily to first aid, leaders. And that's why it's important for us to have a valid first aid certificate or a valid CPR certificate. The other thing that's very important, is that we need to be prepared ahead of time. So here, this is where I normally say failing to plan is actually planning to fail. And that's why it's important, leaders, to plan ahead of time our Pathfinder activities, to share the Pathfinder itinerary with the church board. And, you know, I want to emphasize this. The church will always prioritize what they feel is important to the well-being of the whole church. And unfortunately, children tend to be neglected. And this is why, leaders, we have the Pathfinder director, the adventurer director, the senior youth director in some churches, also the ambassador director, and also the youth leader in the church who form part of the church board. And this is very important, that we need to ensure that we are well prepared and we plan sufficiently for children. I cannot overemphasize the importance of planning. And I'm sure we have heard also in the previous presentation how important planning actually is. Now, some of the medical care basics include the 4 basic items that are mandatory for medical care. Number 1, the club director or designee must have a current health record form for each minor and adult. And this depends on the size of the club. Some clubs are privileged enough to have a nurse who is a designee to look after the club. And in that case, they need to have the health record form. And why this form is so important, leaders? For example, in these forms, you may have information about the child's allergies. You may find that the child, for example, is allergic to different things, such as certain types of foods. Some children are allergic to grass or different types of grasses, and so forth. And when we are aware of this, we are able to look after our children well. Point number 2, when transporting minors, the driver must have a current medical consent form signed by the parent or the legal guardian. And in this case, if not the driver, it will be the director who has the current medical consent form. And in this form, sometimes parents may make it clear what are the things that are acceptable to them and what are no-nos, things that cannot be done for their child. So we need to be aware of that. Point number 3, every club should have first aid kits appropriate to the expertise of the club. There are different types of first aid kits, and some of them goes with the level of competence, particularly of the first aid provider. And we just need to be aware that there is a basic first aid kit, there are pocket first aid kits, and there are also car first aid kits. And let's just be aware of this, leaders, so that our clubs will actually be in safe hands. Point number 4, I cannot overemphasize this, that staff members need to have a current first aid or CPR or an automated external defibrillator certificate, what we call an AED certificate. We need to have this in our possession at all times. Leaders, we need to be certified. All right. So when we have this, it will show that indeed we are prepared ahead of time as we roll out our Pathfinder activities. And I want to encourage that where we do not have this, please, leaders, let's go back and ensure that we implement. And this is one of the examples of the forms that we will require our parents to complete. And when I read this form, it says, we, the undersigned parents or guardians of the name of the child, do hereby consent to X-ray examination, anesthetic, medical or surgical diagnosis or treatment, and hospital service that may be rendered to the said minor under the general or special instruction of, if the child has a specific family physician or doctor, the parents will complete that, or any physician the club may call, whether such diagnosis or treatment is rendered at the office or say of the said physician or at a licensed hospital. It is understood that reasonable effort will be made to contact the undersigned parent or guardians before such diagnosis or treatment is rendered. It is further understood that the reasonable effort will be made to contact the doctor listed above before any other physician is called. It is therefore understood that this consent is given in advance of any specific diagnosis or treatment that may be required, as given to authorize, and here you put the name of the club, to exercise their best judgment as to the requirements of such diagnosis or treatment. This consent shall remain in continuous effect for 1 year, only 1 year, unless earlier revoked in writing or delivered to the physician named or to the club entrusted with the custody of said minor. And there you will have the date for the current year, and the mother, the father, and the guardian may also co-sign this form. And I've gone through it, leaders, because it's that important. I don't leave it for chance, because I know sometimes we look at these forms and, based on the difficulties and the challenges in our local clubs, sometimes we don't complete this form. So I'm really encouraging us to comply and complete these forms. It will protect you as a leader. And when you are the master guide in your club or in your church, it will help your club to be organized. I cannot overemphasize this point. All right. Lesson D, it talks about supervision and transportation. Here we emphasize that the supervision is the most important task that the Pathfinder staff will actually have. And we need to note that well-trained adult supervisors will greatly minimize the risk of inappropriate conduct during youth activities and events. And all of us who are counselors, who are leaders in our clubs, we automatically become supervisors. And what I also need to emphasize is that it will also minimize the potential for false accusations brought against adult staff members or volunteers. If you have had proper training, like we are going to go through it now, you will see that it will minimize false accusations leveled against any of the adults who are supervisors in our clubs. Okay, so as part of this supervision policy that we have, we talk about safeguarding children, which is part of our policy considerations. Now, the safeguarding entails, and you find this also in the child protection course, and that's why it's important to note this, leaders, and to attend. We have, number one, a 2-adult policy. And this says have 2 adults present in children's classrooms or activities at all times. And this 2-adult policy ensures that at every given time, there are 2 adults who are taking care of our children, such that one will also be a witness. If something is happening in the class, they are able to actually testify or give an account, a true account of what happened. The reason for this, leaders, is that in most cases, it does happen that one leader may need to step out of the class or move away from the class, and there will be someone who actually supervises the activities. Okay. Point number 2, have an open door policy. Now, what this open door policy entails is that it will discourage private or one-on-one contact and encourage an open door policy in all situations. And where an open door is not possible, at least there will be a second adult at the door who is also overseeing. And this, it just protects leaders, for example, against false accusations. Another point that's very important is volunteer screening. We have emphasized this point. And I want to just say that have all volunteers complete a volunteer information form, check their references, and if required by law, as we have now already emphasized, do a police background check, ensure that leaders have a police clearance. Point number 4, the 6 months policy. This policy requires a waiting period of 6 months for newly baptized or transferring members who have indicated a willingness to work with children. And here we say leaders don't rush anybody to work with your children. For example, if I leave Temba Church and I become a member at your local church, and you know that I'm passionate about children, do not put me in a position at least for 6 months, leaders, and don't even allow me to teach your children. And you give me a class alone for your children, at least for 6 months. This will allow you to observe me and any other leader and ensure that they are suitable to work with children. Point number 5, and very important point, is training. And here we say provide regular training for teachers and volunteers to help them understand and protect children and how to nurture their faith. Local church leaders should consult with the conference in order to ascertain conference procedures and requirements, including local legal requirements for individuals working with children. And I cannot thank our conference leaders enough, and particularly our director, for ensuring that we have ongoing training, we have talks, and all of us as leaders, we are sufficiently equipped to care for our children. Now, leaders in the child protection course, we need to be aware of the sound scope of child protection. All right, and this is covered extensively in the child protection course. And the scope of child protection reads, whereas a child is defined as a person under the age of 18 years, whereas in some jurisdictions, the age of child of sexual consent is 16 years, whereas our child protection policy as a church seeks to protect all children and youth, voted that persons guilty of offenses against children, including but not limited to sexual relations with children under 18 years, but with the legal capacity to give consent to have sex, shall be deemed unfit to work with child or children. Further voted that such master guides and senior youth leaders shall cease to be master guides and senior youth leaders and shall be required to return the master guide and or senior youth leader insignia to the conference youth ministries department. I am sure this is very clear, leaders. So let us not feel that maybe when Pastor Rambau requests a leader to return the insignia to the conference, or when the church deems that we should return the insignia to the conference, we are being difficult or impossible. This is actually part of the child protection training that we have, right? It's very important. Now, regarding youth supervision guidelines, here, leaders, we say quality is essential, and to ensure that we have good quality, we need to provide a minimum of 2 qualified supervisors for each situation. And please note the recommendations that are here also regarding the staffing of leaders to child ratios, where the hazard risk is considered very high. We advise that at least there should be 1 adult supervisor per 4 children. So the ratio is 1:4. one supervisor to 4 children. And where the risk is high, but at least manageable, what we can call also moderate risk, we advise that there should be one supervisor per 8 children. So the ratio there is 1:8. And where the risk is very low, we and the Adventist Risk Management Incorporation advises that we should have 1:12, where one adult will look after 12 pathfinders at a given time. Now, what we need to note is to now look at our own clubs and see if these ratios are doable. And this means if we are going to be going for high-risk activities, we will have to actually involve church members who in some cases, and in most cases will be parents of the very pathfinders. We need to encourage them to be part of our excursions or activities. I cannot overemphasize this, so that at all times the staff member to child ratio is taken care of, and therefore we can prevent or minimize adverse risks. Now, leaders, there are good and bad touch areas that staff members need to be aware of. And here, I want to emphasize that there are 4 regions or zones, what we call personal zones, that we should not touch our children on. And these zones are the mouth, the chest, between the legs, and buttocks. I have paused the leaders intentionally. I want to emphasize the importance of noting this, particularly for our adventurers. I know when I say this, in most cases, leaders say we are difficult, but it's important. Leaders, when you are dealing with adventurers, please ensure that the parent or the legal guardian is with the child at all times. For example, when a child has an accident, as a director, as a leader, as a counselor, you are not allowed to touch the child's buttocks. So if they've had an accident and you take care of them, please note that it might work against you as a leader at some stage. You may be labeled as someone who is abusive or who has been abusing a child. Please be aware of this. Sometimes it's about how children report what happened when you are helping them. And I want to emphasize the importance of the 2 adult supervision policy. When you are accused, you cannot defend yourself. The other adult who was available is the only eyewitness who can defend you as a leader. So I cannot overemphasize this. Okay? And that's why we also say adventurers, for example, they can only camp for 1 night. And when you do these arrangements, make sure that the parent or the legal guardian is the one who is with the child throughout the camping experience. It will avoid a lot of problems. Now, appropriate touch guidelines, they state that always ask a child for permission to touch them for any reason. Point number 2, when touching a child, only touch at the shoulder level or above the shoulder level, except when necessary to ensure the safety and well-being of a child, like, for example, when you are providing a first aid to that particular minor. The other one, only give children side hugs. Now, this thing of giving children open hugs and just lifting them indiscriminately, leaders, we are discouraged to do that. You can give children side hugs. They are still warm enough. And the other one that's very important is that do not engage in inappropriate physical contact of any kind, including rough physical play, physical reprimand, and horseplay. When I talk about horseplay, Leaders, please, let's be careful. In the curriculum, I don't remember us having a curriculum that encourages us to be on our hands and knees and having adventurers and pathfinders riding a horse on us. So we just need to be aware of these things, leaders. If we have been practicing them, we need to just be careful and desist from such practices. All right. Now, when we are traveling with children, the safety aspects that are critical. Number one, volunteers should not travel alone with a child or a young person. And in case of an emergency, please always inform the parent or the guardian. And when we are using transportation, always at least leaders have 2 adults in each vehicle, particularly when you are using taxis or buses and so on. Have a sufficient number of supervisors present also. Okay? If you're using a 15-seater, make sure at least there are 2 adults in the transport. I'm sure I'm very clear. So even if we have 2 taxis that are hired and there are some adults who want to travel in their own car, please make sure that you don't make children travel alone in a taxi, in a passenger vehicle. And then the other important point is that the use of 15-seater or 15-passenger vans are not approved by the ARM liability. And what does this mean? There are certain panel vans that are converted to become passenger transports. These are deemed unfit for transporting our children. Leaders, I want to also encourage us to note these important points, that all trips and any meeting conducted off the church premises must be pre-approved by the church board. This is a very important point. And all trips, including day trips and overnight stays, need careful advanced planning. And where possible, leaders, please go and check the facilities, know everything about that, including the emergency areas that you need to be aware of. Point number 3, adequate liability insurance through your local conference is important. And here, leaders, we need to ensure that our children are covered. And what is also important is that appropriate auto insurance should also be in place prior to any trip. The car that is used by our children should be covered by a third party. And then also, written consent by parents and guardians for each trip is encouraged. And a copy of the trip itinerary and contact numbers of the leaders should be available to parents and guardians. And there must be adequate gender-appropriate supervision for boys and girls. Arrangement and appropriate procedures should be made. They should be in place where all the rules are clear and the appropriate boundaries are maintained at all times. We need to also ensure that we provide appropriate and adequate sleeping arrangements during all trips, and the sleeping areas for boys and girls should be separate and supervised by 2 adults of the same gender as the group being supervised. I cannot overemphasize this. And if an emergency situation arises, an adult considers it necessary to be in a child's sleeping area without another adult being present, he or she should immediately inform another adult in a position of responsibility. So we need to ensure that at all times there is open communication, and this issue of 2 adult supervision is adhered to at all times. I cannot overemphasize these points, my beloved leaders. Now, when you are providing medical care, just as a reminder, because I assume that we have valid first aid certificates, and if not, we are going to make the necessary arrangements that we have valid first aid certificates following this course. So that's another assignment. Leaders, please ensure that you have a valid first aid or CPR certificate. But just as a reminder, when you are providing first aid, ensure safety at all times before you can provide first aid. We don't want a situation where you don't check the hazards and you run into a hazardous situation and you also become a case of emergency. Now, once all the hazards are taken care of, they are removed, or the risk is minimized, we advise that you tap on the shoulder of the victim and you shout, "Are you okay?" And this will ensure that you check if the person is awake. You check also in a split second or in those few seconds that the person is breathing, and you call for appropriate help. And where can we find our help in South Africa? We can use our cell phones and call 112. We should always remember this number. And if you are using a landline, we can call 10177. That's an emergency response line. The other important point that we need to check is that if the victim is awake or breathing normally, we can roll the patient on their side and we keep checking for breathing until help arrives. And as we are doing this, we are reassuring the victim. We are telling them that, listen, I am here and you are fine. Help is on the way, okay? And that will give them assurance and comfort. And if they are not awake or they are not breathing normally, what you need to do is to ensure that they are lying facing up, what we call a supine position, just facing up. And the head also is well positioned such that they are not choking or their breathing is not obstructed. And then you can push in the middle of the chest and you do 30 compressions. And what you do, you push hard and fast. You do 2 pushes per second and you give 2 breaths, meaning that you do 30 compressions and you give 2 breaths, 30 compressions, you do 2 breaths. And by so doing, leaders, you will actually be saving a life by ensuring that the blood circulates throughout the body. What is known is that the biggest cause of collapse in children and adults is mainly cardiac. And in very small children, sometimes it can be also respiratory, but in the majority of cases, the cause of collapse is mainly cardiac, meaning that it has to do with the heart, how it pumps, and so forth. So by just doing this basic CPR, you could be actually saving a life. And what we say is that keep doing the CPR until help arrives. As a first aider, you will be trained that you do not certify anyone dead, even if you can see that they are not breathing, even if you cannot pick up a pulse. You keep doing CPR until help arrives. In the case where you are not able to give breaths, I want to emphasize in this training, leaders, that just doing the compressions has been scientifically proven to be sufficient to sustain human life. Okay? And then you can see the last point. It says, if unable to give breaths, push on the chest repeatedly. Rescue breaths are especially important in the rescue of children and infants. I think I've already highlighted that in adults and bigger children, the main cause of collapse is mainly cardiac, or at least the heart is involved, but only in children it can also be due to respiratory issues or respiratory failure. Okay, now regarding medical care, what we need to know, leaders, is that in general, call for professional medical assistance for major injuries. And in that very event, ensure that parents are contacted. Consult also the child's health record for information you may need to provide the best care for the child. All staff should hold a valid first aid or CPR certificate, have access to stocked first aid kits. In some cases where you have used the first aid kit, please make sure that you replenish the kit. Refer to the health record before giving any medication, because you may find that, you know, some children are allergic to certain types of meds, or they develop some kind of reactions to certain medications. So when you check the health records, you will know what to give and what not to give to certain children. The other important point is that be aware of 3 common issues. And what are those key issues? It's the allergic reactions that our children may actually be having. Also note if a child has asthma. The reason is that we need to be vigilant and not expose our children, for example, to what we call status asthmaticus, which may lead to a child having serious difficulty breathing, and as a result, it may be really, really adverse. The other one is diabetes. There are some children who may actually be diagnosed with diabetes, and in that case, we need to be aware of their management when we are out with them and know what needs to be done. Okay, so these are very important points that we need to be aware of. Now, leaders, the other important thing that I just want to bring to our attention is the food allergy reaction symptoms and the body parts that we may actually see some of the signs and symptoms of allergic reactions. One of them is the skin. It might be presenting with redness, or the child might complain of itchiness, or they might actually develop hives on their skin. They may have also red bumps. They may actually present with swelling beneath the skin. We need to be aware of that. The other one is the eyes. They might be rubbing their eyes consistently or complaining of itchiness in their eyes. They may have teariness in their eyes. Their eyes may be red. Sometimes they may be swelling around the eyes. So we need to be aware of that. The other one that's very important is breathing. We need to be aware of nasal congestion, because sometimes both noses or nostrils, we have only one nose, yeah, both nostrils may actually be blocked or congested. Sometimes it's only one, but generally if both are congested, the child may be mouth breathing, okay? And we need to also check, you know, for itchiness. Sometimes they may have a runny nose. Sometimes they may be sneezing a lot, and their voices may be hoarse. They may be coughing uncontrollably at times. They may present with shortness of breath, and you may hear some sounds coming from their lungs, such as wheezing. All right. The other one, it's the mouth, where we need to see the signs, or where we may see the signs and symptoms of allergic reactions. The lips may actually swell. The tongue, sometimes it may be swollen, and the child may feel that their tongue is thick. It's filling their whole mouth. And sometimes the palates, the soft palates and the hard palates, the child may complain that after eating something, they feel that it's itchy or it's swollen. And sometimes they may have itchiness in the mouth. So we need to be aware of that. All right. And then the other signs and symptoms include stomach issues, like, for example, the child is feeling nauseous, they feel like throwing up. We need to be aware of that. Sometimes they may have what we call colic abdominal pains, where they feel that they have excess gas in their stomach. Sometimes they may complain of a reflux. And this reflux, it might actually, they may tell you that they are feeling a sour taste on their throat, or they're feeling some burning sensation on their throat. We may just note that as a sign of reflux. The other one, maybe it could be vomiting, that is obvious, and sometimes the child may be experiencing diarrhea. And with regard to the heart, what we need to be aware of is the rapid heart rate. In some cases, if the child presents with low blood pressure, and in some cases where the child presents with dizziness, or maybe where the child may faint, or they have a loss of consciousness. We need to be aware of this. Now, the first thing to do is to avoid allergic foods, and to note also all allergies, for example, from touching certain plants, or from bee stings, being exposed to grass, and so forth. When we are aware of these, leaders, we will be able to provide first aid care that our children will need. Now, some of the treatments that are important for us to note. This I'm going to just summarize, but for healthcare workers, I know that in this platform we may have healthcare professionals as well. We need to keep an eye also on these anaphylactic reactions, and these are reactions that come as a result of allergies or as a reaction to any adverse event at times. Okay. Then what we need to note is to keep the patient calm, keep the child calm, reassure them, tell them that help is here or help is coming. Avoid giving any oral allergy medicines or any liquids if the child is having trouble breathing. And if the allergic reaction is from a bee sting, scrape the stinger off with a cut or a fingernail, and do not use tweezers because they may actually break the venomous stinger, and it may release more venom into the stinging area. Okay, we just need to be aware of that. The other one, to help prevent shock, have the person lie flat with his or her feet elevated above 30 centimeters where possible to elevate the feet. Otherwise, you can also place them in a recovery position. And you can cover him or her with a blanket or a jacket. Do not put the person in this position if it causes discomfort or if a neck and back or the leg injury is suspected. Okay? And then the other point that's important, do not put a pillow under the person's head if he or she is having trouble breathing, because when you put a pillow or you use something to put on the head, it might further obstruct breathing by closing or occluding the airways. And where possible, if there's a need, administer the epinephrine or the EpiPen if it's available. And also get them to the emergency room as soon as possible if you have administered any of this. And what I just need us to note is that in these anaphylactic reactions, we are careful of the A, B, C, and D. Here is the airway, the breathing, the circulation. We take into account also the disability, and we note the exposure. We need to keep in mind what the child has been exposed to. And most importantly, call for help and ensure that the child gets appropriate medical care. This epinephrine is very important, leaders, to just avoid further shock to the system. And I think this is my last slide. What I just want us to be aware of is this very big word that we call anaphylaxis. What is this word? It is a sudden onset of involvement of two or more systems, and it might be partly maybe or the skin or the chest, the heart, mouth, or the gut. And any chest or airway or heart signs after exposure to a known allergen for the patient will also be classified as an anaphylaxis. And we have covered the symptoms, and I hope that leaders are now aware of this. And I'll encourage us also, if we have children that are allergic in our clubs, please visit the Allergy Foundation South Africa website, and it will give you some more information as a leader to be aware what can be learned or what you may need to prepare yourself for. And this, leaders, it wraps up our talk. Thank you very much, my leaders.
Oh, thank you so much, my leader, for the comprehensive training and the prayer. Oh, I see there's a hand already. Sean and Justice, I'll give over to you. Thank you, my leader, for the powerful presentation here.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It was awesome information. Just a quick question. Right in the beginning, I think it was under lesson A, under the travel requirements, it said that all club meetings must be approved by the church board. Now, I'm on the church board, and I know that there's been some times when club meetings have been changed, or it comes through at a different day, and it hasn't come through the church board. Does this mean each and every church board, or what was the meaning of that sentence? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, my leader. I think, leader, what I can advise is that, especially at the beginning of the year, the plans for the Pathfinder Club should be presented to the church board. And that helps because when we make a vote to accept this or we want to question, we can actually do that and advise the youth leaders. It is in such meetings where some input is given. And finally, also at where possible, when we are planning excursions and so forth, it is important to let the church board be aware. So in short, I just want to emphasize that particularly at the beginning, when you are presenting your plans, it's important. And where possible, whenever you are planning to have any major trips, make the church board aware and let them approve. And I'm sure that, you know, we may have different experiences based on our different churches as well. And I'll also allow other leaders to assist on this point and contribute further. I'm not sure, Sistando, if I've captured this very well.
Yes,
but
it's
yeah,
clear.
Yeah, it's about, you know, ensuring that there are no activities of the junior youth ministry that take place without the knowledge of the church board. Thanks.
Yes, that's correct. I think it's clear. Sorry if I Chabungwa. Please.
Okay,
unmute.
thank you. My question is based on the first slides of the presentation, and then with all the other presentation whereby it was emphasized that for one to become a staff member, they need to be recommended and voted for by the church and the church board. So now my question is, in a case whereby one commits an offense that the church deems that they need to be a disciplinary action against the person, or maybe they are sanctioned. So now what are the implications to their membership in the ministry? Do they stop becoming staff members for the period determined by the church? Or maybe there's a disciplinary action from the ministry. And in case whereby they are master guides, do they stop being a master guide for the period determined by the church, or do they have to redo the training? Thank you.
My leader, let me first acknowledge that this is a very difficult question. And I'm going to appeal to my leaders who are also on this platform to assist, and particularly our conference director. I want to emphasize that our church has a zero tolerance policy on child abuse of any form. And I think that's the first statement that I need to put forth. We have a zero tolerance policy. Now, in the event that there has been a leader who has offended with regards to their conduct, so they've shown misconduct, where such misconduct warrants that the leader should return the insignia to the conference, it means that that leader cannot continue to serve in the children or the youth ministry, particularly this junior youth ministry, because I think we are very clear on that. They have returned the insignia. So once this pin is returned to the conference, I cannot wear this uniform. Therefore, I cannot be a master guy. In some cases where, for example, one leader has been censured pertaining to any other church, you know, procedure that has been executed against the leader, We advise that we should continually attend training, and if that leader is not barred by the church, by the club to work with children, they can continue working with children, but they need to update their training. So they need to still continue doing their BST and to ensure that they are updated in terms of their knowledge, and they may actually continue working with children. What I want to be clear on is that for offenses, for example, let me take another one that is a bit controversial. Where, for example, an offense is of a sexual nature, we need to report this to the church board. Yes, it's fine, and the church can follow its disciplinary processes. However, we do not stop there. The matter should also be reported to the authorities, such as the police, because the church board is not equipped to deal with some of these issues. And I think I'm very clear, leaders, that we exercise zero tolerance to any form of child abuse. And I think I should pause here and allow my leaders to assist. Maybe I did not become very clear, or I'm being very difficult. Please assist me, my leaders. Sistando, Pastor Rambau, Dr. Mtuno.
You are clear. It's how that's, yeah, I think you addressed. Are you answered, ma'am? Okay. She went off.
Yes, I am answered. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Jerome, then Ma'am Cynthia, then we'll address the chats. Over to you, Jerome.
Oh, my apologies. I was struggling to unmute here.
Okay.
Greetings, leadership. My question was on the part that was presented on, especially on the adventurer side, that maybe we are having a program for the adventurers, or maybe it's a camp or an outing or an event where it was stated that let the guardian or the parent of the child be there. In a situation whereby the parents say, I am not available to attend, what do we do with that child? That is where my question is. Should we return the child back because the parent is not there? Or the parent can, there's a document maybe that the parent can sign to say, I gave them the responsibility to take care of my child. Therefore, whatever can befall my child, I'm not going to hold them liable as the leaders or something of that nature. That's where my question is.
Thank you so much, my leader, for that powerful question. Again, it's not an easy question. And I actually wish to hear the voice of my director also on this one. What we are clear on.
Sorry, I'm muted.
Okay, sorry, I was muted by accident. What I want us to actually be clear on, my leader, is that for particularly adventurers, we advise that parents should be part of the adventurer club. There are no activities that should take place with adventurers without parents. And I think I've tried to emphasize that. But we do understand that at times, the adventurer may be coming to church with a guardian. I mean, it does happen even in my local church. And in such cases, the legal guardian or the guardian that comes with the child, we then involve them in the care of the adventurer. And that just makes it easier, my leader. For example, if you are going to have more young children as an adventurer leader, and you go in an excursion with them, and all the parents give you permission to look after their children, the risk is actually heightened. And that's where, you know, we need to actually plan sufficiently that we avert the risk as much as possible. And I know that this answer sounds diplomatic, but what I'm clear on, my leader, is that yes, parents may give you a note. What if there are 10 parents who do the same? They say, please look after our child. We trust you so much that you can look after the child. And while you are paying full attention to one child, with kids, in split seconds, they can actually, you know, be at an increased risk for injury and so on. So it is for your protection. And I think this comes at a time where we are really encouraging leaders to go back to churches and say to churches, look, we have been doing this practice of letting children go alone or with few leaders, but now we really want to encourage parents to also participate and be club members. And that way, we will minimize risk and allegations of abuse. They will also be minimized. Because I think I've been clear that there are areas that we do not touch, particularly between the legs and between the buttocks of a child. In such events, we don't know how children may report the incident. And when they report it, we don't know what might be the reaction of other families where these children come from, to hear that when now you have, as an adult, they say Chabalala has now touched our child between their legs and their buttocks. Why? Why will they do that? And they don't understand the circumstances as per the report of the child. So those issues are there to protect us. Thank you so much. I'm not sure if maybe I've expressed it well, but if possible,
Yes.
also please, my leaders, assist me further.
I think it's clear. Thank you so much. And on the chat, thank you for the presentation. Thank you so much for the presentation. Mimi says, thank you for the presentation. There is a question, the 15-seater vehicles referred to that aren't approved by the conference, are those what are commonly known as minibus taxis?
These ones are not necessarily the minibus taxis, but we are talking particularly of this so-called passenger vans. These are some of the vehicles that have been converted to carry passengers, and they may not be even appropriately approved. And I'm sure maybe there might be another leader who understands this much more clearly when it comes to transport. But when I was doing the preparations, I understand that it talks to those passenger vans. Yes.
Okay. Other chat, thank you so much, Dr. Shabalala. The presentation was very insightful and eye-opener. May God bless you. Thank you for the informative. Is there a presentation? Is there a difference between emotional, mental, and psychological abuse, or these words are used interchangeably, meaning or refer to one kind of child abuse? Is there a difference between emotional, mental, and psychological abuse? Hello, that's a question.
Can you hear me now, my leader?
Dr. Shabalala, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. My other laptop just locked me off, and I'm glad I had another device on.
Okay,
Sorry about
thank
that.
God.
Yes. Please repeat the question.
Is there a difference between emotional, mental, and psychological abuse, or these words can be used interchangeably?
Okay, thank you so much, my leader. For ease of understanding, let's take them as words that can be used interchangeably. Let's take them as words that, you know, can replace each other. In other words, emotional abuse in a way, when you look at the terminology and how one would like to understand it, it actually talks to those heads that are deep-seated. And yeah, just for ease of understanding, let's take them as interchangeable. Hello? Am I still clear? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can still hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think just to summarize, let's take it as interchangeable terms, but we know that the psychological and emotional abuse, they are different. For example, there are certain traumas that come as a result of post-traumatic events. And they may fall under, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorders. They're different, for example, to just insulting a child and calling them, lomnyama, lo, and so forth. They do injure a child at different levels, and the interventions thereof also are slightly different. So we just need to be aware, but for ease, we can take them as interchangeable, without getting deep into it. Because most of it also goes into mental health issues and so forth. Thanks.
Okay. I'll give it over to Pastor Rambau. Maybe he has additional comments.
Yes, please.
Please unmute.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Notando. Thank you so much, Dr. Chabalala. Now let's remember that when we are doing these trainings, we are doing them so that you be aware of things that you might not be aware of. As Dr. Chabalala was presenting, these are the things, some of these things are required by the law. I heard some say a 15-seater quantum is not illegal. I don't know how true is that. But he says all 14-seater quantum are not converted. But when you see now a quantum is a 15-seater, is converted one. But I have not verified those facts. So when we come also to the issue of adventurer camping, the adventurer, they do not camp because imagine how can a 4-year-old take care of him or herself? So trying to avoid the issue of what we call litigations, because you can go with somebody's child there and when you are bathing and he comes back home and say, hey, my private part is painful. And will ask what happened, Sister so-and-so or my director was bathing me. So, and that will be classified under abuse. So we want parents to take care of their children. When we go for camping with their children, parents, they must bath their own children. Parents must take their own children to the bathrooms, because we don't want a situation when you as a leader take that child to the bathroom, there's no other person who is with you there. The child can come back and say, hey, so-and-so was touching my private part. And as Dr. Chabalala has addressed it to say there are areas that you cannot touch. But obvious, when you take this child to the bathroom, you are going to touch him or her. You are going to help him to take the trouser down, the underpants down, the underwear down. And that can be classified as abuse and anything can happen. And the law says we need to stand with the child. Whether the child is lying or is right, we need to stand with the child. If the child come crying and say, hey, this one was touching me here, the law says we must listen and be with the child, whether the child is lying, until the facts are verified. So when we do this presentation, we want to protect you as our leaders. So let's not be creative and come with ways to say, how can I be creative on this one? So that we bypass the law. But because tomorrow it might catch up with us. We allowed the adventurers to come in our Pathfinder Fairs, in our Adventurer Fairs, because of the demand from the conference, from the constituency to say, hey, we need to do something for adventurers. but the law does not allow us. Our policies, they do not allow us to allow the adventurer to camp. As we are going to the Pathfinder Fair next year, we are requesting that parents of those children, they come also, so that we protect you as leaders. So this is not the conference thing that we are bringing. This is the general thing. This is the law of the land that requires that we need to protect our children at all cost. We still encourage you that leaders, please, let's also apply for the insurance. Our insurance is very cheap, less than $1. You are covered for events. So, and another thing, the issue of checking transport, if that transport is roadworthy, is very important. We can be sued for using a transport that is not roadworthy. That's why we keep on educating one another to say, hey, don't just go and pick a quantum on the street, then say we are going to Villa Villa or we are going to Joburg. Make sure that you have a relation, you check the quantum, you check the driver to say, hey, we are going to this trip. The driver must be ready for the trip, must not be a person who will be drinking and smoking on the way, because we are exposing our children to danger. This is not my doing. This is not the conference doing, but the law requires that we check all those things. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sister Lamini.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes, can you hear me?
You are very low, Mom Dami.
Yes, yeah, I'm just want to ask from Dr. Chabalala, but I think our director is the one who can answer this about the police clearance, name clearance. At social development, they do background check and issue certificate of a name clearance. And their certificate is valid for 2 years. So I just want to know from our director and Dr. Mkunu, is that one not allowed for the master guide in training? Because they do the background check, like, I don't know how, the way at police services, they do it, and their certificate, it's valid for 2 years. And this one at the police station is valid for 6 months. So I'm just want to know from our directors, if it's not allowed, what is the reason? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Pastor Rambau, can you, yeah, that was a bit far, but I think you were saying there's a police clearance in social development.
Social development, yes.
That is valid
issue,
for 2 years. Is that not
yes.
allowed for TOC? Yeah. For, I mean, at our conference.
Yeah, for master guide
Thank
in
you.
training.
Thank you so much. Police clearance is not only for master guide in training. Anyone who works, whether adventurer, whether children ministry, whether a pastor who works with children must have a police clearance. If it's 2 years, so I can do it, and after 6 years or 6 months, for example, go and commit an abuse. And I serve for 2 years without the church knowing. So when it's 6 months, you do your 6 months. After 6 months, if you are still standing, if you are still in good books with the law. So that's why they recommended the 6 years. This is not the conference doing. So the law says police clearance. We can go to other institutions for gathering other information, but the law says we need police clearance so that we are safe. And you, Mama Dlamini, you are also safe. And as leaders, we are safe who are dealing with children. The main person here we are protecting is the child.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think Mfundisi has clarified it. Everything we do
Yeah,
is for the best interest of the child.
of the child. Yes. The other question, Fundisi, before you go off, is there a first aid training at TOC? If there is not, are there any recommendations where we can do the first aid?
Thank you so much. As the TOC, we do not have any we don't train people for first aid. But district federation, sometimes they do outsource for their people. And that is what we recommend, that federation district churches, they outsource for Red Cross, for any person, any even individual. I know Amelia Fori, she also do this first aid. She's a qualified and accredited first aider. I don't know others because we do not deal with first aid, but districts were outsourcing on that one.
Thank you. And then if one had a first aid certificate level 1 and 2, how long is it? I think it's valid for 3 years, first aid, if I'm not mistaken. And how many levels of first aid do we need to undergo?
Okay, this one I can answer very quickly. There are different accreditors of first aid training. Like for example, healthcare professionals are required also to do the basic first aid that we normally do, that we know. And normally it will range between 18 months and 2 years. Generally, it's 2 years. And it means that, just check your certificate, make sure that you have a current and valid first aid certificate. So that takes into account the issue of the different levels, level 1, 2, and 3. Like I know in some companies, they will have what we call safety officers. And those safety officers may undergo first aid training according to the levels that are designated for them as safety, security, or safety officers. So just be aware of that, leaders. And I just want to emphasize the importance of making sure that you check your certificate, let it always be current and valid. Thanks.
Thank you. The other question, in South African law, I understand that a spouse can refuse to testify against their spouse. Given your rule that 2 adults should always be present, does it matter when those 2 adults are married or a couple? How do we navigate situations where in a church and the clubs?
Yeah, leaders, please note that we are providing guidelines, and indeed, there are lots of legal issues around issues of children, starting with the Constitution that says whatever we do is for the best interest of the child, to the Children's Act, and other subsidiary acts. Please note, leaders, that what Pastor said, we should not try too hard to be creative. And where I'm working with my wife, for example, and if we are the only 2 people who are working with children in that particular incident, our training is such that we should always be professional. I think that's the first thing. And we should have received the BST. And in that case, the law is able to separate individuals. So if there's a need that somebody has to testify, they cannot refuse, and they'll be subjected to law. So yeah, some of these questions may be very technical, but please let us know that the spirit at which we are bringing this is to say we place the best interest of the child to be of supreme importance.
Okay. Thank you. Sister Lindy, okay, I'm just going to take 2 more hands and we'll take a break. Sister Lindiwe, and then Malungelo, and then Tsigi. Those are the last hands, and then we will have a break.
Thank you, Notando. I'd actually just like to thank Dr. Shabalala for this presentation. I think it's one of the very crucial and very critical presentations in our journey and in our operations as people that will be working with children. I'm very happy the way he thoroughly covered the precautions that we need to take in terms of making sure that we handle the medical issues of children the way he did. Yes, I think, leaders, it will mean a lot of paperwork that we might need to do. But I think it's imperative that we adhere to this, because not only if we don't do this, not only are we going to discredit ourselves, but also put the church at the end of the day, in bad light, rather, for lack of a better word. And the second thing that you also handled is the issue around the legal aspect of us working with children. So it's just not just everyday business. It's more aware. We need to be aware of the fact that there are legalities that are actually coming into play when we work with children, and we have to be accountable. So we should not be found wanting. I just want to emphasize the fact that you mentioned about the clearances. The police clearance, this is why now it's no longer just easily acceptable when people are working with kids, because this clearance is very general. It would actually just pick up any crimes that a person has committed. But the one from social development is under the Children's Act. So there is a child offenders register where people who have committed offenses against children are listed there. So this is why we need to do this one as well of the social development, because it zooms in on specifics of child abuse and child offenses. So even if it takes 2 years, it has to be renewed after 2 years, because if you do not have this one and just have the police clearance, it actually doesn't carry any weight, because that other one does not speak to actually the risks, or rather the work that we are doing. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about is also the issue of risk management that you've spoken about. And I'm just, struck by so many risks that we all just in one session, be it a meeting or a session with pandas, there's so many risks that we don't even look at, that we don't even think about. But my question here is, you classified the risks into 3, especially when we're talking about the youth supervisors guidelines under risk, and I called it risk classification, where you said you talked about the ratios. Yes, I understand with the two people or 2 supervisors always being in the site, but I wanted to know who is going to train us, or who or how do we rather find information to say, how do we classify a risk as a hazardous, and how do we classify one as a high risk? Because those two there could be just a thin line that we may not, we may not look into, or maybe cross, and then low risk, so that we can be able to justify our ratios, because we said the ratio is 1:4 for hazardous, 1:8 for high risk, and 1:12 for low risk. So my question is, how sure can we be sure that we've classified the risk adequately? Thank you.
Thank you. Can we mute your lines?
Yes. Thank you so much, my leader. Okay, I was muted. Sorry for that. Thank you so much, my leader, Mamlindiwe, for such clarity, and for a beautiful and not so easy question. You know what I like, leaders? I think I should go back to saying, if you look at this module, it says introduction. And when I look at this, I saw a lot of wisdom. Because in one sitting, given the constraints of time, one may not be able to cover all aspects. And therefore, we introduce the medical issues, the risk management issues, and child safety issues. And I am sure that based on our needs, Umfundisi is listening, Pastor Rambau, there might be someone who is an expert in risk management who may come to talk to us, particularly regarding risks that pertain to children. But I think this introduction, its main purpose, leaders, is to sensitize us to saying that it should not just be business as usual when we are looking after our children. We need to make sure that we take extra care when handling our children, and we should implement certain precautions. when we are planning various excursions and activities for our children. So I will hold it there, Mama, to say, I don't know, whether we have a specific risk management training, but I can assure you our church is so equipped. That's why we have the ARM incorporation to handle issues of risk. And I know there was a leader that also spoke to us in one of the seminars around issues of risk, and we received some more training. So Mfundisi, I don't know, maybe you'd like to add on this?
Thank you so much.
SID is ready to train us, but when we are communicating with them, they say,
Thank you so much. And hello? Oh.
Hello?
Am I the one who's breaking? Oh.
Hello? Can
Hello?
you hear me?
Yes.
So I was saying SID is ready to train us, but the challenge is they said this training, it will need 3 days, not in a we give them an hour, the whole day from morning, maybe until up to 3 days. So that has been a challenge to get that time. And how do we call our people to come and attend that particular training? She's right. We say, hey, we have a lot of risk, even things that we don't think they can be risky. They are very risky. So we wish maybe we can have a conversation around that. How possible can we do it?
Thank you for that, Mfundisi. Mama, you can hear that, like I said, that's why this training, it's introduction. There are lots of issues that we need to be aware of, and I'm glad that we are sensitized to them so that we can better take care of our children.
Thank you so much. We'll leave it here. I'm so sorry for the additional hands. We do need to close, but thank you so much, my leader, for the powerful presentation. We will have a 15 minutes break. We'll be back